McGraw-Hill Professional presents The Tech Entrepreneur's Survival Guide: How to Bootstrap Your Startup, Lead Through Tough Times, and Cash In for Success. Written by Bernd Schoner, Ph.D. Narrated by Stephen Roy Grimsley. Chapter 1. The Entrepreneurial Dream. It's kind of fun to do the impossible. Walt Disney, 1901 to 1966. In the summer of 2000, 4 fellow graduate students and I, all with a decade or so of higher education under our belts, started to panic about what to do after our then imminent graduation from MIT. We were all going to get PhDs, which meant that we had to retire from grad school. A PhD is the one terminal degree that is truly terminal. No more hiding in fancy labs free of real-world worries, no more projects that were supposed to save the world, but, honestly, were mostly just a lot of fun to work on. We sat on the lawn in front of the media lab and decided to start Thing Magic LLC, a technology design and prototyping firm. Unlike most successful entrepreneurs who leave school to found a company, we founded a company because we had to leave school. We decided to work out of a garage, just as all the other successful tech entrepreneurs in the 20th century had done. It seemed like the right thing to do, and it was going to be free. We spent a few hours cleaning out the messy shed that belonged to the only homeowner among us, put up shelves and benches, pulled a network cable from the main house, and started designing circuits the very same day. At the time, entrepreneurial activity was imploding in the dot-com bust. Investors and investment dollars had all but disappeared. With funding nowhere to be found, we started working on development projects for large corporations in exchange for cash. To stay alive, we saved money in every aspect of our business. Our salaries were way below market, and the founders and management team had to live with a substantial amount of deferred compensation. We paid just enough bonuses to avoid the turnover of our most valuable employees. My co-founders never forgave me for purchasing what they considered test equipment, unworthy of their talents, used oscilloscopes and computers with the Enron property sticker still on them, exchanged for a few dollars at a sketchy highway rest area. We did not travel unless someone else picked up the tab. I went as far as sharing a hotel room with a customer. Never do I want to get that close to a client again. In managing the company through this period of bootstrapping, I earned the reputation for being an intolerable miser. I was Scrooge. In my defense, we did operate profitably during our bootstrapping days, an accomplishment we could not repeat for a long time following the infusion of venture capital, VC. I remember those early years as a time of extreme improvisation and near-death experiences. Anyone who knew about our quarterly, or should I say weekly, numbers felt pressure by the uncertain cash flow. Yet, this early period was one of the most productive in the life cycle of the company. Frankly, I have never worked as hard before or since. While bootstrapping the venture as a services company, we slowly built a product portfolio in radio frequency identification, RFID, an area in which we happened to come across a few funded projects. We didn't choose to focus on RFID technology, it chose us. Then in 2004, Walmart and other major retailers in the United States and Europe issued their RFID mandates. In essence, the retailers ordered their suppliers to apply RFID tags to all shipments. Walmart would no longer accept products from vendors that did not comply with the directive. The technology industry stood in awe. What an unprecedented and unbelievable opportunity! The largest company in the world was mandating the use of a specific technology that hadn't even been fully validated. Even by conservative estimates, the RFID industry was poised to ship tens of billions of tags annually, in addition to supplying massive numbers of reader infrastructure, software systems, and business process re-engineering projects. For Thing Magic, the rapid market development was both a blessing and a curse. We had already established ourselves as a brand within the industry, and our name recognition and influence far exceeded our small size and revenue. We had bet on the right horse without too much thought, and we found ourselves in the best imaginable position to reap big profits and personal riches. On the flip side, the prominent opportunity quickly attracted competitors and capital. New startups popped up by the dozen, and within a few years, more than $1 billion of investment had been poured into our industry. Later that year, one of our startup competitors was acquired for a proud sum north of $200 million. We should have followed our competitor's example and tried to sell, but instead, we used the positive investment climate for RFID to abandon our bootstrapping ways and raise capital. Up until then, we had pursued a licensing strategy for our RFID reader designs. A couple of large multinationals had paid us in exchange for the rights to make and distribute our technology. That strategy was working out well initially, but it became constraining when the licensees insisted on exclusivity, didn't aggressively market the devices, or couldn't respond to our own needs for manufactured products. We felt compelled to start our own manufacturing effort, which didn't exactly sit well with our licensee partners. Should we have been surprised that manufacturing products is an expensive and risky undertaking? If you build inventory and the customers don't buy it, despite their earlier assurances, it is a problem. If you don't build enough and they want to buy, it is also a problem. Manufacturing the right number of products sounds like a simple forecasting exercise, but boy, is it difficult to guess right. We learned the hard way that bootstrapping without significant cash in the bank and manufacturing are not exactly compatible strategies. In 2005, we bit the bullet. We changed our legal structure to Thing Magic Inc., accepted more than $20 million in VC money, and hired a full-time CEO. The hype in our industry allowed us to raise money at a very attractive valuation, one we would never match again in future funding events. Overnight, we found ourselves in the middle of what, in hindsight, was our very own RFID bubble. Following the capital infusion of Thing Magic, I was dumbfounded by how much our little company needed all of a sudden. Annual external audits, extended liability insurance, market rate salaries, bonuses, trade show booths, $100,000. PR representation, volumes of legal documents, and key person insurance. We were a real company all of a sudden, and being real turned out to be really expensive. Only a few days after our Series A funding round closed, I heard one of our VPs state in a meeting, "We used to do things the cheap way. Now we are doing them the right way." I was quite offended, given my role in establishing a culture of frugality. The comment was unfortunately paradigmatic for the behavioral change in the company. Every group and department felt an immediate need to spend, and hence the money raised disappeared much more quickly than any of us had anticipated. A couple of years later, saving money was once again a top priority, and the VP quoted above had long ago left to pursue other opportunities. While the meaning of doing things right changed multiple times in the life of Thing Magic, doing things cheap was usually spot on. Venture capitalists and boards of directors like to use established formulas to get their arms around the unpredictability and complexity of startups. They are particularly quick to hire a team of seasoned executives to run a young company founded by inexperienced technologists. Any sign of difficulty presents an opportunity to bring in the guys who have done it before. In quick succession, we hired VPs of engineering, business development, sales, and manufacturing, and just to be sure, we recruited an army of middle managers as well. Unfortunately, it was less than 2 years before most of these executives had to leave. They were all very good professionals, but they could not deal with Thing Magic's specific challenges. Their prior professional experiences had not prepared them for a situation that required them to lay off people rather than bleed to the tune of millions a quarter, change the business model dramatically rather than design boxes that nobody buys, visit customers personally rather than sending underlings to manage zero-revenue accounts, or shift production to China rather than manufacture at the shop around the corner. The boom in the RFID market was followed by the RFID bust. The industry that was going to take over the world, in which we were so well positioned, belly-flopped in a heartbeat. The potential customers that had pushed us into developing this new technology all of a sudden were in no rush to spend actual money on our marvelous inventions. We had just finished staffing up to more than 60 people when we were forced to lay off almost half of our dear colleagues, without doubt the most painful period in our history. I used to tell our disgruntled, overworked, and underpaid employees that we would be doing a bad job if we had every single resource we needed fulfilled, and if we were not operating on the edge of impossible. A healthy small business needs to manage with fewer staff than a conventional corporate approach would suggest. Surprisingly, this insight is not obvious to many startup employees, and the few who do get it easily forget it in the midst of their daily routine and workplace anxieties. Ironically and sadly, a round of layoffs silences even the biggest complainers. The survivors understand the principle that the company goes through, a reduction in force in order to continue operations, preserve shareholder value, and protect the remaining jobs. The downturn in our industry was accelerated by certain patent holders who used the opportunity of intense market interest to foment fear of an intellectual property (IP) war in RFID and to extort exorbitant and unjustified licensing fees from vendors. Ultimately, these patent holders never made much money, but their actions helped kill the interest in the very RFID products they were trying to collect royalties on. Faced with the prospect of an IP battle, many customers of the technology simply said, "Thanks, but no thanks." Since those early days, a second wave of patent trolls emerged, who clearly did not learn the simple lesson from the earlier situation. When nobody is able to sell anything, nobody makes any money. Unlike many of our competitors, we were able to adjust our business model and survive the RFID bust. We reduced our expenses and staff, and we focused on the development of technically advanced original equipment manufactured OEM components, which our larger competitors weren't interested in. Nevertheless, the A-round capital was soon depleted, and we found ourselves trapped in a fundraising spiral, constantly looking for more cash to keep the lights on. Over the following 3 years, we negotiated a number of convertible bridge loans from our investor group, along with multiple new equity financings. As our de facto valuation was going down, the financial instruments became more and more creative. Our investors were patient and supportive. The RFID crisis had affected startups in our industry badly, but the crisis had largely gone unnoticed by the greater financial and technology communities. Investors continued to enjoy flexibility and the ability to protect individual portfolio companies, including ours. We thought we had weathered the worst. Then in September 2008, the world economic crisis struck. It seemed as though commercial activity had come to a complete standstill. While previous crises, including the dot-com bust, had been more or less contained within specific industries, this was the mother of all crises, and it affected every market, region, and company, as well as everybody's personal livelihood. Some of ThingMagic's VC investors ran into financial and leadership trouble themselves. In one case, there literally wasn't an investor representative left to look after us and actively manage the many millions they had put at risk. Banks started to go to extreme measures, such as foreclosure on venture-funded startups, a fate that we were fortunately spared. No institution was safe, and capital came at an extra hefty premium, if there was any to be had at all. There was one saving grace in all that misery. VC investors have no tolerance when their peers run out of money or are unwilling to support a troubled portfolio company. Those investors who don't play along and co-invest in follow-up financings are quickly demoted, and their preferred stock holdings are converted to common shares. Miraculously, ThingMagic was able to reduce its outstanding preferred stock while raising follow-up funding rounds. As a management team, we had sudden and unexpected leverage coordinating the fight between those investors who remained stalwart in their support and those who had lost interest. The world economic crisis resulted in modest demand for IT and RFID equipment, the benefits of which we started to feel in the years following the meltdown. In 2009, the founders and board decided that it was time to sell the company. Our investors were reluctant to pour any more money into ThingMagic, and the founder group had been whittled down to a tired and disillusioned bunch of three, some of whom barely talked to each other anymore. There was also little indication that the RFID market would recover from its curse anytime soon. We hired an investment banker to bring a quick resolution to the matter, only to find ourselves struggling through another dramatic 18 months before we could conclude a transaction. During that final period, we lost yet another co-founder, at the worst possible moment, no less. We had a falling out with our lead investor, and we learned that an M&A negotiation doesn't bring out the best in people. The screaming matches among otherwise perfectly reasonable business people would have been comical had there not been so much at stake. In the fall of 2010, we finally closed on the sale of our little company, more than 10 years after we first incorporated. We sold the venture that we in the market had transformed many times over to Trimble Navigation, a billion-dollar public technology company headquartered in California. In the end, our investors were reasonably content and glad to move on. We had negotiated hard to protect our staff and the integrity of ThingMagic beyond the acquisition. All of our employees were given secure jobs, to the extent there can be job security in the technology sector in our day and age. Personally, I did not make enough money to buy myself the proverbial private island, and I expect to be working for a living for years to come. 3 of my co-founders had left ThingMagic by the time it was acquired, and even I had considered jumping ship many times during the life cycle of the company. In the end, the founders and key managers who did stick around were instrumental in the outcome of the acquisition and its impact on our employees. Naturally, talk of money dominates M&A negotiations, and yet there is a human component to this transition that requires champions lest it be forgotten. Startups that don't sell at multiples of their invested money have no contractual safety net built in for their employees. A founder who is no longer there cannot watch out for the interests of the company and the staff, or her own legacy. After the acquisition, I was put in charge of integrating ThingMagic's technology with the parent company's product offering, essentially operating as an in-house corporate entrepreneur. In many ways, the post-acquisition months and years resembled the early days of ThingMagic. We were asked to apply our technology and make it commercially successful in a highly resource-constrained environment. To our surprise, being part of a large public corporation is hard work as well. In summary, neither world economics nor the RFID industry nor ThingMagic's internal dynamics have been kind to me and my fellow ThingMagicians. Yet we came out of the other end of the tunnel and created products and a brand that have a good chance of living on for many years. Why have I written this book? I spent a decade of my life trying to make a technology company successful in the face of every imaginable obstacle and catastrophe. I'm sharing that experience in the hope of helping high-tech entrepreneurs get through their own difficulties with the fewest scars possible. I have also reached midlife, and I figured that authorship is a more constructive outlet for extra energy than buying a Porsche or getting a mistress. This book introduces entrepreneurs to the process of starting, financing, and selling high-tech ventures with a particular focus on typical crisis situations at every stage of the natural startup life cycle. Part 1 guides the reader through the initial startup process. Setting up shop is not rocket science, but it had better be done right in order to fully realize the business potential. Bootstrapping techniques are necessary early on, and they can come in handy at later stages of a technology venture. Part 2 shows a path through the treacherous jungle of venture capital financings. Investors can bring success to a venture, but in many cases, outside funding can be fatal to the interests of founders and employees. If capital is needed to build the business, founders and managers should be prudent about how much to take, from whom, and when. Part 3 offers advice on how to sell a technology company profitably despite underwhelming financial performance, disgruntled employees, and bad market conditions. Keeping the team intact and looking strong are two of the most important tools in lining up a successful exit. Many technology entrepreneurs end up watching their companies die, wondering what went wrong. Many venture capitalists see their portfolio companies burn through millions without generating a single dollar in return. Many employees of small tech firms find themselves looking for a new job every other year without getting anywhere close to a financial windfall. It doesn't have to be this bad. With the methodology presented in this book and reasonable expectations on the part of the various stakeholders, many a startup could be spared an unfortunate end. In this book, I address the technology entrepreneurs who are leading their companies to success, somewhere between gigantic flops and spectacular initial public offerings, IPOs. I'm hoping to help tech company founders be successful even if they operate in a difficult market, deal with economic crises, fall out with their co-founders, or end up in bed with hostile investors. Startup books like to introduce technology entrepreneurship as a neat chess game in which the right strategy and skill lead to inevitable success and riches. In reality, running a tech company is more like guerrilla warfare. The best planning is made obsolete by events totally outside your control. Strategy is important, but so are opportunistic tactics to keep the company afloat when earlier assumptions don't pan out. Part 1. Bootstrapping. Venture Creation Out of Thin Air. Chapter 2. Should I or should I not venture into entrepreneurship? We know what we are, but know not what we may be. William Shakespeare, 1564 to 1616. Hamlet. Tech entrepreneurs enjoy a career second to none in excitement, opportunity, and reward, with the exception, that is, of those founders among us who waste our best and most formative years implementing doomed business ideas, who lose their relatives' life savings in ill-conceived ventures, or who can't deal with the tremendous emotional ups and downs of startup life. Before you give up on less volatile career options, consider these all-important questions. Why entrepreneurship? Why now? And under what conditions? If it were only a matter of money and financial upside, the answers could be easily calculated. Yet the financial reward is only one of many issues to be considered, and, without getting ahead of ourselves, it is by far not the most important one. Indeed, if you are primarily motivated by monetary gain, you are setting yourself up for serious disappointment in the event that your company does not hit a billion-dollar valuation. Timing. Contrary to urban myth, only a small percentage of technology entrepreneurs are very young when they start their first company. Only 15% of all high-tech entrepreneurs found their company before the age of 30, and only slightly more than half of all tech founders are under 40 when they start their business. The average tech entrepreneur lets 15 years elapse between receiving her terminal degree and founding her first company. Most surprisingly, only 0.9% of all U.S. technology companies are founded by entrepreneurs without a bachelor's degree before the age of 25. Given this statistic, the success of famous college dropout entrepreneurs, including Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, and Mark Zuckerberg, is even more remarkable. Numerous successful entrepreneurs have started companies at the beginning of their careers, toward the end of their professional lives, and anywhere in between. For many of us, circumstances trump careful strategic thought about the right moment. For those of you who have the luxury to choose, let's have a look at the pros and cons of founding technology companies at different times in your career. Why should a 20-something young kid with no professional experience to her name consider entrepreneurship? Why could it possibly be a good idea to start a company right out of college or grad school? The blessings of poverty. First of all, if your post-school entrepreneurial endeavors stumble, you won't fall very far. Your financial needs are probably as low as they will ever be. You share an apartment in borderline sanitary conditions, and your family is very small. as in one person small. You do not carry the financial baggage that will burden later years of your life. In addition to your personal financial flexibility, you don't have the expectations of an established professional. There will be time to make money, but for now, being poor is just fine. You secretly hope you will be following in the footsteps of Steve Jobs, who reflected, "I never worried about money. I went from fairly poor, which was wonderful because I didn't have to worry about money, to being incredibly rich, when I also didn't have to worry about money." Smart as you will ever be. Right after leaving college or grad school, you have the advantage of being up to date on the latest and greatest in science, business, or technology. The in-depth knowledge you acquire during your secondary education is truly special, and this freshness will never return to the same degree later in your career. It turns out clever employers systematically exploit this phenomenon by aggressively recruiting the brightest of the brightest right out of school. As an entrepreneur, you have the opportunity to get the most out of your freshly gained and paid for education for yourself, which is a more rewarding prospect than letting some consulting or financial services outfit suck your brain dry 24/7. Academic farewell gifts. Coming out of school, you may have first-hand access to an idea, a technology, or a patent that lends itself to commercialization. Professors or scientists at times come across a new technology with commercial potential and not too many strings attached later in their careers. However, most professionals encounter this opportunity only once, and that one time is in grad school or right after completing it. The innocent enthusiasts. Finally, upon completing your education, you are more likely connected with peers who enjoy a similar free-spirited attitude, personal situation, and energy. You can find your co-founders among like-minded graduates who will go about the great adventure of founding a company with an innocent enthusiasm that professional experience will almost certainly destroy. As a young university graduate without real-life experience, you have to rely on good common sense and your education when it comes to making business decisions. If you are lucky, you will outwit your own inexperience while you are learning on the job. Not very comforting? Here are some good reasons why you might want to become a company founder later in your career. Nobody to learn from. The downside to being an early career founder is that you will spend the most formative years of your professional career in a situation without direct mentors and role models. As an entrepreneur, you are your own boss, and nobody can tell you what to do. As great as that is, it means that you will have to learn from people you are doing business with, or from those who are reporting to you. Be prepared for your business partners to exploit your lack of experience and for your underlings to look to you for guidance rather than advise you on what to do. The benefits of gray hair. Years of professional activity have established you in a field and have let you build a reputation. This should allow you to hit the ground running when you finally become an entrepreneur. Furthermore, you'll have had practical experience in real markets, with real customers, and with real technologies. When you spot an opportunity to create a startup, you can vet it against everything you know about your field. Good fallback options. If you fail in an early career startup endeavor, there isn't really a career that you can go back to. You may just have to start all over again. Later in your career, on the other hand, you'll have two fallback options. Either you retire or you pick up your former career where you left off. Taking a career risk with a big bank account is so much more fun. Finally, the flexibility you enjoyed right out of college may just come back to you later in your career. You will reach a point where your kids have left the house. You may be able to survive for a while without regular income, and you can once again commit more than 40 hours a week to your business. As much as we would like to schedule our entrepreneurial endeavors as part of a 50-year career plan, life usually gets in the way. If your decision to found a company emerges from chaos in your personal life or certain peculiar circumstances, don't resist the urge. Take advantage of opportunistic situations, as counterintuitive as doing so may be. If you were just laid off, take a holy oath never to work for someone else again and set up shop. If you invented a great technology and
Sample complete. Ready to continue?